What's up out there? We are back with some more Path of Exile, and this is the Settlers version of the Behemoth that the Legacy of Frisia event brought us. The thing with the Legacy of Frisia event, or with the Behemoth from there, I should more exactly, is that you couldn't cast spells. So you just can't cast spells. You have no access to anything that... anything that's a spell, no auto exertion. There's just a ton of things you can't do. But at any rate, this is my rendition of that in Settlers League. We got the Behemoth. I played it for a while. I really dug it, but I was curious how not running spells would play out in the regular league. And my thinking was that we are... the ascendancy, the Behemoth ascendancy in Frisia wasn't exactly magical. The only thing, basically the biggest thing that it had to offer was some extra fortification and the rampage skill that would constantly run. Or not skill, but you could get rampage that basically never ended. So the way rampage normally works is you have to kill a monster to get a rampage stack to build up. With the Legacy of Frisia, you just built stacks up every time you hit an enemy. So when I read that, the first thing I thought was Cyclone, because you constantly hit enemies and you could build that rampage up. But then when I actually played it, I didn't really see all that much of a difference between a regular Cyclone build, because I've been playing a lot of Cyclone builds this league, but I didn't see all that much of a difference between regular Cyclone and Rampage. Rampage, the Behemoth version of it. The Rampage is cool. It offered a lot of explosions, and it had some nice features to it, but it wasn't anything that was like build enabling or anything like that. Like, I can get fortifications here. I can't get as much fortification, and I can't get necessarily as much rage. I definitely can't get as much Rampage. The Rampage is a lot slower to build up, but I can do a lot of the same things that build did, and it kind of inspired me to work on, well, I mean, it definitely inspired me to work on this build. But when I came back to Settlers, so I put together the Behemoth in Frisia League, got it up to a point, and thought it was really cool, and then came back out here to try, because there wasn't really anything terribly unique about that Ascendancy. So I came out here. This build has no magic on it at all. I'm not running any auras. I don't have just nothing. There's no auto exertions. There's no war cries. Well, that's auto exertion. The automation, whatever the magic, the blue version of it's called, whatever it is, I can't have any spells. So that's a limitation that I've put on myself. However, when I was digging through my uniques, I found this thing here, which gives you the Molten Burst on melee hit, level 16 Molten Burst. And I've talked about this several times. I didn't really need to 6-link this. I just needed to have 6 sockets. So because the Molten Burst is on this axe, I can put all 6 support gems on here. Now, if I can't run any magic or auras or anything like that, that frees up a whole 6-link. And it actually kind of frees up more sockets than that, but I've filled them in over time. But it frees up your complete 6-link on the axe. So that means that you can put, and you don't need to 6-link this for the support gems to work, but any support gem you put on that supports Molten Burst applies. So that means you can actually 6-socket or use 6 support gems in this. So we've got Elemental Proliferation because it gives you 20% chance to ignite, combustion for chance to ignite. We've got greater multiple projectiles. We've got added fire, returning projectiles, and vicious projectiles. So I kind of messed around with the formula on that. I did have Culling Strike on this for a little bit, but I ended up swapping over to vicious projectiles. I think the Culling Strike was happening and not allowing the monsters to explode. So I've got this on a Chieftain Ascendancy, and we get Death's Fury, which enemies you kill have a 5% chance to explode, dealing 500% of their max life as fire damage. I feel like having the Culling Strike on it was not letting, like, you see all these explosions popping off. They're not necessarily all that often. I mean, it's a 5% chance, but when you're killing 5 or 15, 20 enemies at a time, you're more than likely to get an explosion fairly frequently. So I thought, okay, I want to put Culling Strike on there because that means I don't have to, I've got Culling Strike on my Leap Slam, but then I have to stop cycloning to Leap Slam. So if I put it on this Molten Strike, whatever this thing's called, that means that it's not Molten Strike, whatever this ability is that comes on this axe, whatever it's called. If I put Culling Strike on there, that means I didn't have to stop attacking and Leap Slam. However, in practice, I think it was limiting the amount of explosions that I was getting, and I was getting more of the Culling Strike effect where it was just killing the monster and not letting it explode. I don't really understand it because it would still be killing the monster, but I don't know. It just didn't feel like I was getting as many explodes out of it. So one of the things that whether it was the Rampage version with the Behemoth or this version, one of the big benefits of this is the explosions you get to kill everything off. The difference between this and the Rampage version is with this, the explosion on kill is at any point in time. It's not with Rampage, you had to hit certain checkpoints before you would get the explosion on kill. With this, it's constant. You always have the chance to make something explode. And when something explodes with 500% damage or life, whatever that percentage explosion is, it does a lot of damage to neighboring monsters and it clears them out a lot faster. So that's like the way I'm working with this. It's not necessarily going to be a bossing build, but I think it's a really good clearing build because you can just nuke everything in sight if you've got something to clear on. Now, if you're doing single targets, this thing's probably going to take a little bit more to kill off, but I've got some other tricks up my sleeve for that with a couple of war cries on here. And let's see if we can get this thing killed off. We've got Culling Strike, and that's that. Was there anything I needed to go look at? Just some garbage over here. So let's run back to the encampment here, and we'll talk about some changes that I've made, because I've talked about this build several times. So we've talked about this. I basically changed out I don't remember what I had, but I swapped it over to Culling Strike. Like I said, it didn't work out that well, so I've moved over to Vicious Projectiles. That seemed like a good idea. I had Infernal Cry in here, and I've talked about this one before, because Infernal Cry gives you Combust. When you mix that with Corrupting Cry, you can actually just War Cry on something, it catches fire, and it gets the bleeding debuff. Now, the downside to that is you actually have to stop to do the cry out for it. But, oh, that's resetting. That's interesting. That's actually resetting. Oh, never mind. I'm hitting the wrong one. That's this one that I want to hit. Okay. So that's the Infernal Cry. I was using this for a little bit of extra damage. The problem is you have to stop to War Cry, and it kind of sucks. I finally realized that I want to use Enduring Cry because I've spec'd over into Endurance Charges, but I don't get Endurance Charges when I'm fighting bosses. I only get Endurance Charges when on kill. So if I'm fighting a boss, I really want to have my Endurance Charges up. So I realized, hey, I want to do Enduring Cry and then have an Urgent Orders, more duration, and Second Wind on it so I can use it more often. At one point, I was spec'd into this Flames Advance where non-unique jewels add strength and transform things to fire damage. I was thinking about coming up here and picking this up and using, when you put a jewel in, when you've got this Flames Advance, you put a jewel in, it puts a big circle around, gives you plus 3 strength into all these different nodes, and it turns nodes like this into fire damage instead of physical damage. So I was thinking about going into that. I was thinking about stacking some strength up, and maybe there's some really cool options here. 20%, no, not that. +1 armor per 2 strength we get on here, and then there's this one over here, is it? Somewhere we've got one that gives you more damage per strength, something like that. I don't remember. There's a few of them on here that I was looking at doing. But when I switched over to this War Cry thing, or when I switched over to Endurance Charges, I pulled out of this and went over into Sun's Roar because this gives you an increased War Cry buff effect and gives you War Cries have infinite power. So with Enduring Cry, the buff grants 2% life regenerated per second per 5 power, so maximum of 25 power. I'm at full power the entire time, and I gain 1 endurance charge per 5 power. So throwing this thing out here fills up my endurance charges and gives me the life regeneration. So that's going to be a nice little benefit to have for like boss fights and stuff like that. And I think that's about all that I've got. But now I've got all my sockets filled. We've got a Leap Slam cluster down here, Enduring Cry here. We've got the Infernal Cry one up here. I've got all 6 of these sockets supporting this Molten Burst. And then, of course, on the Attila's Hunger, I've got my Cyclone set up. Now, I've also migrated my actual Behemoth build from Freesia League over here. As I was playing this, I've got this up to level 90. I made a whole bunch of changes to my tree. I came over here into Hatchet Master. I picked up the Frenzy and Endurance charges. I don't think I had those in my last video. And I can't remember some other minor differences here. But as I was playing this, I was like, this is pretty fun and all, but I was really curious about what the pure melee version of it. This has got fire damage. Oh, and I did fully convert over my fire right here, 40% of fizz converted into fire. So the axe itself converts 60% of fizz to fire, and then this over here completes that conversion. So I am doing 100% fire damage with no physical on it. So I liked where this build was going, and I'm down at, where are we at here? Well, I was down further down. I was down around this area, down at 144. We can go run one of these real quick. I'm running level, depth 144 in Delve. I know it's not super deep, but for leveling, I tend to stay around 130 to 140. It's somewhere in that realm. There are all level 82 monsters, so you level up fairly quickly and easily. And this is running really well. I don't have any issues. I'm not dying too much. There's certain nodes that I hit that I don't do very well on, and I get mowed down. But for the most part, this build is running really well. So I was curious about what the actual Behemoth was, and we'll go look at that here in a second. But the build's doing really well, and I ended up migrating my Behemoth over from Freesia, and that thing's a monster. We'll get into all that. So this build here is probably doing about 250,000 damage, I think, at the moment. I know the axe is going to be a massive limiting factor, and that's another reason why I wanted to transfer my my Behemoth over, was I wanted to see how that worked out over here. Got a lot of stuff to upgrade. So let's go take a look at that build. And as mentioned, this is my Behemoth Cyclone that's actually brought over from Legacy of Freesia. Still running no spells. I've made 0 changes to it. We're still at level 94. And tooltip damage is 224,000. I think on POB, the way I've got everything set up, this is at 1.2 million damage at the moment. So it's doing pretty good damage. Now, I've made some pretty significant changes to this. So this is running Cyclone. We've got Cyclone with Pulverize, Melee Fizz, Impale, Infused Channeling, and Brutality. I did have the Infernal Cry set up in this chest piece as a 6-link. So I pulled all that out and tried something different. And I've added the Enduring Cry setup that I had from what I just showed with that other build. Still got Leap Slam with Culling Strike on it, so that hasn't changed. All the gear is the same. On the passive tree, when I swapped over from Legacy of Freesia, I had what did I have over here? I think it was the immune to poison or immune to bleeding. I had that option for that mastery selected. I had to pull that out so I could get this over here, melee hits Fortify. So I didn't have to use the Fortification support gem. Because the Behemoth Ascendancy actually had fortification built into it, I was getting like 30 or 26 or 30 or something like that. I was getting a decent amount of fortification. So I'm getting less fortification here. It's only like 23 or something like that. And I have to take this node. So I had to move that over to here. And I don't think I had to move anything else. So the rest of the passive tree is the same. Everything I've got. I started to go down the path of, because when you migrate your character over, you migrate from what Freesia was to the Settlers League. And because the Behemoth replaced the Berserker, every time I've brought a Behemoth over, it's because I've had 2 Behemoths, I brought it, when it comes over as a Berserker. And I was going to change this over to Chieftain. I went through the whole process of going through the labyrinth and everything. I was sitting right there ready to swap it. And I looked at this and I thought, you know what? It's probably in my interest to leave this as a berserker and not change it to a chieftain. And then in hindsight, looking back, I realized it was I dodged a big bullet because I would have had to rebalance all of my my rings and amulets and everything to support fire resistance to account for the chieftain. So this, sticking with the berserker like it came in with, was a real good option. And that also goes into like Crave the Slaughter, where rage gets increased attack speed and stuff like that. Rite of Ruin, like all of these aspect of Carnage gives me more damage, 40% more damage. Defiance, you get the Defiance charges. Like all of this looked really good, and I played it a little bit. This feels really good as a berserker, so I think this is a really good setup. And I think this is pretty much, I think the passive tree that I stuck with the passive tree that I used on my behemoth in Freesia League was based on the berserker that I had in Settlers. So it's like all coming around in full circle. But you can see it, it just, it slaps, man. It does some decent damage. It kills everything off. What are we at? We're only at 136 depth. I mean, I could take this a lot further. I'm not sure how much further I could go. Like, I don't know that I could go to, like 200, 300, 400 depth or anything like that. But I could definitely take it a little bit further. So I brought this build over, set it up so I could play it in here, and I've fought a few bosses with it. I took down the Warlord a couple of times, Drox or whatever he's called. I took him down. These guys are what kills my other Cyclone build. They have a lot of damage that hurts. But at any rate, these guys are not that big a deal in here, and we got Culling Strike, so we can wail on them and kill them off. But at any rate, you can see this build is just doing really well. I'm amazed. If you listen to people talk, they would tell you that the Behemoth Ascendancy was useless, that you can't do anything with it, that you need to have like 50,000 armor to go do anything. I've got 14,000 armor. All of this is based on armor. I don't have any evasion, no energy shield. I don't have any energy shield or anything like that. There's no spells, no auras, nothing. Everything is flasks, armor, flasks, gear, and passive tree. That's pretty much it. But I'm very pleased with the way this worked out. It's played very well. And the other thing that I tried with this is Cyclone of Tumult. And I ended up pulling out my Infernal Cry because Infernal Cry is kind of annoying to cast. Like you have to actually stop and then cast it. So I was looking at this. Since I brought this over, I have access to my Cyclone of Tumult gem. So I threw it on here and I'm leveling it up on the side. The interesting thing with Cyclone of Tumult, and I need to take Conk Effect out to actually show this, is it works in stages. So as this thing ramps up, oh, no, that's not the one. This is regular Cyclone. You can see how big this is. We're, I don't know, touching this table and that. If I can keep the right click in the same spot. If I throw Tumult on here, this thing stages up and it gets a lot bigger. So now we're going over to the other side of the table. So if you let this thing roll out, it's got 6 stages to it, I think. Yeah, maximum of 6 stages. You get 10% increased area of effect per 0.1 meter of additional melee strike range. You get 25% more attack speed. That is not movement speed, that is attack speed. So if I go on here, we go from, offense. We're at 505 attacks per second. Nope, wrong button, this button. If we pull this up, we're at 12.66. On the regular Cyclone with Rampage, well, actually the regular Cyclone, I'm at 11.36, but I have a much smaller AoE. So the interesting thing is when you use this, you actually move a lot slower. Your movement speed goes to minus 47% with Cyclone of Tumult. With regular Cyclone, it's plus 6. So it's kind of an interesting thing. And then if I throw Conk Effect on here, this really decreases the size of the AoE, but I'm thinking it's going to bump the damage up. So not only did I bring this over, put it in the Berserker, swapped around a couple of, just that one point to get the Fortify charges, but I swapped out the Infernal Cry because I really wasn't using that all that much to try to build up this Cyclone of Tumult and try that out. So I'm going to level this thing up and see how it goes. I've got a ton of these support gems that are already leveled up to a decent degree. I'm going to try Conk Effect in here and see how it works. But if you're curious to see, we'll go to this one. It's close and it'll be easy. If you're curious to see what this looks like in actual use, this is Cyclone of Tumult. I should let it get a little bigger, but man, or I should pull the Conk Effect out so it gets bigger, but look how slow that thing is. I don't think it's doing more damage, but I think the idea of it is that the slower movement speed and the faster attack speed is going to allow it to do more damage when it gets there. But I think my regular Cyclone, the movement speed more than makes up for it. So what I was thinking about doing with this, and with the way, because we're not using, we can't use spells. I mean, I can use spells now, but with the Behemoth, I couldn't use spells. But here, now that I can use spells, I'm electing not to. I'm electing to keep the build the way it is. So because I don't have any spells, that pretty much it frees up an entire 6-link and another 4-link. I can do anything else I want with it. So I think I'm going to try either whether I stick with this Cyclone of Tumult. I haven't decided yet. I may go to regular Cyclone. I want to see how much damage this does when everything's fully upgraded. If it's more than that, Cyclone of Tumult is probably what I'm going to switch to during boss fights. Like I'll have to switch out, this has got good movement speed, but then this Cyclone of Tumult does more damage. Maybe it's going to be a little bit slower. Actually, it's got a decent AoE on it, even with Conk Effect. It's not quite as big as without Conk Effect. If I take that out, the AoE gets a little bigger. And then if I put this back in, it's hard to tell. It definitely doesn't get as big with the Conk Effect in. But at any rate, I've been playing this. I've been alternating back and forth. I got the other version of this up to level 90, and I'm going to take that one up to 94 where this one is, or 95. I'm going to try to get this one to 95. I've been working on some boss fights. I fought Drox a few times. I'm trying to get some more Drox gear. Like I want to get some more of these rings, these influenced rings. Like the curse enemies with vulnerability. In the Drox gear, I think I could get maybe an axe or something. They had like Culling Strike built into it, so I could just have Culling Strike on it. So I may try that. I don't know how, I don't have to worry about that. That's the other build I have to worry about that on. But at any rate, I want to farm some Drox, and I got this build migrated over, and I'm pretty happy with it. It's definitely the Berserker's the way to go with this. So I may do this again next league, and I'm looking for what I want to do next league. I'm not like planning for next league. I just want to take a look at all the different builds that I've got and then select one to try to refine and then take into, at some point I want to go into SSF and then play that from start and try it out as like a league start practice for the next league. I'll do that closer to when we get an actual announcement for the next league and stuff like that. But at any rate, that's going to do it for this video. Very happy with all my what my builds are doing right at the moment. And it's having no magic or not using auras and stuff like that it's different, but it's doable. It's very doable. This has got 1.2 million damage and it's running along just fine. So anyway, that's going to do it for this video. Oh, and I should add, I ran a tier 17 with this earlier. I dropped a T17 map. I ran it. I died a few times. I fought the boss, and I had the boss down about a quarter of the way or halfway, somewhere in there. And then they just went bananas and started throwing stuff all over the place. And I couldn't survive that. It definitely needs more in the survival category, but it was good enough to run tier 17 and get to a boss and fight it at least. So at any rate, I'm very pleased with the progress this build's made, all my builds. But anyway, that's going to do it for this video. We will catch you on the next one. Take care.